One day, a giant tower suddenly rose in the middle of the city, and everyone whispered that the end had arrived. Yet the tower itself sent a message to the people. Only the brave who could stand up to the tower answered the call and became known as the Walkers. Before the tower raid, a strange object called the Stone of Return showed up, which lets you go back in time while keeping the user's memories safe, but to make it work, you have to break it. Everyone tried to check the stone, but right then, it vanished. One walker admitted they had no choice but to use the stone, while others who faced death or climbing the peak chose a third path, turning back to where it all began. If you could go back in time, you'd be able to fix any wrongs and steer history down a brand new path. The walker was left alone with the lurking danger, knowing no one had reached the 99th floor since the tower appeared. So he decided to leave the past behind and climb the tower instead. It looked like the whole world had fallen apart. A young man grabbed a torn package of food in the store, only to find out it was broken, while the news said the sky was full of dust and smog from recent sandstorms. The guy turned to the girl beside him and asked if she was stealing food from damaged packages, while the announcer warned everyone not to leave their homes for the next few days. Breaking news says a sudden earthquake just shook the ground, but since it wasn't strong, no one has been hurt yet. A guy scooped up the spilled food from the floor, while the news warned that the earthquake was getting stronger and everyone needed to stay safe. Chaos erupted once more outside the window as people rushed to hide from the natural disaster. The young man lifted the child to check if he was hurt, while everyone in the building watched in fear and held their breath. Across England and other lands, people stared in awe at giant towers rising alongside strange weather shifts, wondering at these mysterious structures that everyone began calling towers of nightmares. The system cheered the player for being picked as the hero who would save the world. Those who took on this job were shipped to the battlefield and cheered by the system, but people quickly saw it wasn't a game. A huge crowd stood in an open space, staring up at the tower with no idea what to do next. Before long, the tower would finally show itself. When people spotted strange creatures and wondered if they could be human, they knew the police had to be called. The big disaster came. Monsters rushed out of the tower to take over the world, and 1/3 of everyone living there was wiped out. Those trapped inside the tower could only watch as people saw the system picking walkers to save the world. One of the walkers pointed out that climbing the tower might save the world, so since they were already there, they decided to give it a shot because if they made it to the top, this nightmare would finally be over. The brave and strong among us were the only ones left who could save everyone. The walkers charged into the tower to stop the world from ending, knowing they were fighting a losing battle against the monsters. Suddenly, rocks blocked the path ahead, stopping the walkers in their tracks until one of the players shouted, "Let's clear this way!" The force helped clear the way, but did it really work? One of the wanderers handed the captain a glowing stone that could take him back in time, and while the commander warned it was dangerous, Huang Chan promised to reveal everything about it once he had a chance to use it. The captain grabbed the stone, vanished from sight, and left the group wondering if he could truly come back from the past, while Sakamoto, a former scientist, whispered that the answer might be simpler than they realized. Sakamoto explained that Huang and Chan had gone back in time, but a tear in the fabric of time and space meant he would never be able to come back. Sakamoto used science and ideas about parallel worlds to explain that a tear has ripped through the fabric of time and space. This means the commander who traveled back through time is no longer the Hang and Chan we know in the present. The walker claimed it was terrible, but Sakamoto saw from their eyes that they knew nothing at all. Hang and Chan ended up in a different time and place, but his trip back to the past wouldn't actually change what's happening now. Sakamoto warned that the tower's ancient items never lied, for the strange stone could throw anyone into a time rift and trap them in that same world, a power so wild it defies all human understanding. Then another tower was struck by a massive lightning bolt, flashing bright at its peak, and before the world is destroyed, we must find a way to save it. Should they grab the Stone of Return to travel back in time, or stay trapped in the tower until they die? Monsters, chaos, and destruction spread everywhere, making the walkers believe it was the end, leaving everyone with nothing but a crystal in their hands. One of the walkers stood still, puzzled by how many of his friends had already run away. The ones who didn't take the return stone stayed behind as a squad holding the fate of humanity in their hands. At one point, everything fell apart when a monster showed up to attack the walkers, but they fought back and destroyed it. None of the walkers were hurt in the fight, so those who were injured just needed a short nap to feel better. The walkers were sure they could make it to the top floor. A sun and moon-powered sword forged by the master to kill a dragon lay on the floor. The walker grabbed the sword and shouted that they finally had a weapon that could really make a difference. As Yun Huan put it, they were sure to make it to the top floor. The player felt everything was going their way until they reached the 98th floor, where a massive monster waited in a dark, hopeless chamber. Now the world felt ancient and broken, and everything they had survived together seemed pointless because they could die without any reason at all. After a fierce and bloody fight, one of the walkers took a bad beating. Before now, he always wore a smile on his face, even while stuck in this doomed tower. The walkers called him the Knight of Smiles, but for the first time, he had no smile on his face. The injured walker begged his friend to run away right now since they couldn't escape together, so he stayed behind to draw the monster's attention. The injured walker, struggling to stay upright against the wall, managed to climb up the stairs. The bleeding warrior made it to the top of the tower, grateful that his friend had taught him he could reach the very top and glad he had stayed. A snowy plain suddenly showed up before the eyes of a tired walker. The snow monster challenged the lonely walker to tell him if he was ready to quit. The man said he'd never do that, and the walker wondered if the monster was finally done chasing him after 10 years of living on the 99th floor. On the 98th floor, he had faced tough challenges, but this one was far more difficult than that. The ice dragon Velhesis, the master of the 99th floor, blew a freezing stream of air from the lost lands that even the strongest could barely survive. Without the gear the walkers left behind, the hero would have been dead long ago. You've gathered the dragon suppression sword from the 85th floor, the ice demon armor gifted by Yun Huan, and the Flame King bracelet. Sitting at the table, the young man nodded to the blacksmith, believing he could try again and succeed this time. The blacksmith from Oedipus J felt a heavy weight lift off his shoulders upon hearing those words. After taking down the boss of the 50th floor, Alaminus, the settlement they claimed became known as a Tapepos. Even though days came and went filled with the dead or hurt walking among them, the people never lost their hope. Priests formed rescue teams to pull wounded fighters out of danger. The blacksmiths hammered out gear for everyone who fought to save humanity. Jay Huang spoke the truth. Jay was now the final blacksmith of Apis. Jay told Jay Huang to leave that topic alone, because he was the only one still keeping him employed even though the equipment from downstairs had completely stopped arriving despite there being plenty of supplies just months ago. Jay figured this was just something he had to expect. The young man wandered through the empty village, so isolated that he had lost track of time and didn't even know what year it was. After over a dozen towers shook, people finally stopped climbing, leaving the first floor empty. Jai felt humanity had been humiliated, while Jay asked the young man if he had noticed anything strange while studying the tower. The boy recalled that where the stone of return lay, the tower stood inside itself, like a nightmare trapped in another nightmare, while strange markings covered the walls. It might have been a note from a person, but he couldn't make sense of it, especially since Grandma Halen had vanished 2 days ago. Time moves strangely up in the tower, so if a person vanishes, they either slipped back into the past or simply fell to their death. Among the last few walkers left were Halen from Halen's potion and Jay from Jay's workshop. Jang begged Jay to show him how to work with iron. The snow monster asked if the man was done playing hide-and-seek, admitted that no one had ever reached the 99th floor by themselves, and praised the man for being amazing. The man admitted he'd be heartbroken when the monster passed away, but the monster insisted that could never happen. The walker spotted cracks in the monster's armor, even though the beast was so proud of it. After a quick but bloody fight, the walker was injured and shocked, wondering if the man had chosen to fight until the very end, only to find that even survival would leave him with an empty and lonely future. The injured walker whispered that the monster talked way too much. The young man lunged again, but the monster made him give up because he couldn't win on his own. The walker felt he had started the raid too late and missed out on the cool secrets and tricks the others found. So he traded every other skill for just one, pouring all his energy into punching a mannequin with bare hands. The walker relied on a powerful move called the lunge, using it to crush over 50 million monsters until his friends joked that it was practically his middle name, even as he felt the skill shifting beneath his feet. It grew faster, sharper, and stronger until his power outshone every secret skill in the land. This trick wasn't a real skill, it didn't steal your strength, so the walker never got tired in a fight, yet battling was still always hard. Bleeding heavily, the walker charged the monster again, leaving it stunned and angry to think a human could act so bold. The walker declared that one strike wasn't enough and ripped off the monster's head, only for the beast to retort that his opponent shouldn't get cocky after a single hit. The monster claimed that 10 more walkers would be enough to take him down. The monster added that if people hadn't been tricked by the Dream Demon Stone, things would have turned out very differently. The guy asked which stone he meant. 5 years later, the walker claimed the 99th floor and burned out from exhaustion, while the young man wondered about the Dream Demon Stone amid a flood of messages from the system. He was told the top floor held all the answers, so after grabbing the ice dragon sword, he walked right into a newly opened passage and reached the final floor. As the young man opened his eyes, memories flashed before him, and a voice spoke up, thinking the walker would head back to the village first. But there was no need to worry, since he'd already forgotten about the walker and hadn't had time to get ready, so he just had to wait a bit. The walker was cheered on because he was the first to finish training for the 294th world. The walker was shocked, but a voice told him he'd soon get over it before his feelings took over. The voice said it was already too late, so the walker shouldn't be upset because he had done an amazing thing just by being human. The young boy stood all by himself with his feelings swirling inside him. The voice claimed the man had recovered much quicker than expected, asked who stood before him, and the monster admitted he forgot to introduce himself because he was so thrilled by this appearance, noting that the man had reached the 100th floor and had never been seen like this before. He claimed he was the Devil Bistron and the ruler of the Tower of Nightmares. The walker thought, if this is all just training, then the real game hasn't even begun yet, while Beaston, who called the man quick-witted, decided he needed to show the walker something first. When he looked at the picture, he thought it was from a video game. Beaston pointed to the picture, saying they looked so happy he hadn't seen that smile in ages, and though he'd rather have 3 than 2, he was thrilled just to see them together. Beast told the tale of 3 friends through pictures, sharing that it was a sad story and even shedding a tear as he watched. Beaston asked if the man still felt the tears, anger, and regret, wondering if those painful memories were just useless feelings. Bistron offered the man a second chance to play the game again, and it was surely a wonderful opportunity. Beast added that in their world, this kind of story could only happen in books, where a man could start over again with all the answers already in his head. The young man stared in shock, wondering if saving the world from the tower truly meant this was the end. The young man realized he'd been tricked all along, and now believed there was no way for humans to be saved. All that was left for them was to keep trying to take the towers, because saving humanity was just a dream they couldn't afford to have. Beaston claimed that humans had already learned everything there was to know. The walker said he would never go back to the past. Bistron told the man that nothing could send him back to the past, leaving the man surprised since he had just seen the stone that supposedly did exactly that. Bistron claimed that if people hadn't been tricked by the Dream Demon stone, everything would have turned out differently. Bistron quickly corrected his mistake, realizing it wasn't the stone of return, but the stone of the Dream Demon. The Dream Demon stone can't send you back in time, it just traps you in nightmares, and he couldn't believe some people were so obsessed with fixing the past that they climbed all the way to the 77th floor. Beaston declared that they are finally ready to play for real, not looking back at the past but stepping into the game fresh from the very beginning. Bistron added that he thinks people will make the smart choice. The young man told his friend that he finally understood everything because of him, having already stepped into the demon's nightmare, and he promised to destroy the devil so they could move on. Bistron declared that there was nothing more to see, marking the end of the tower, to which the man replied that he no longer trusted anyone. The devil asked if the man's weariness came from the fake items and achievements, so Bistron offered to grant him any hidden power or skill he wanted, but the walker simply replied that he didn't need anything. Beaston was shocked, wondering if the man truly didn't want to go back to his ordinary life. She didn't know he was in the Tower of Nightmares, so he figured there were no monsters to find. The walker thought back to days when folks chatted about common troubles, while the young man stood there, puzzled by what was happening. Beaston told the man he finally realized nobody had died, but the man still looked like he couldn't believe his own eyes. Friends and family were all alive, which must be amazing news for someone like Jawan. So Beaston added that he wanted to show him the most important thing. Jawan stepped into the hospital ward and found rows of patients, but every single one of them was still out cold. Bistron asked the man if he was shocked to see himself, noting that while years had ticked away in the tower, only a single month had passed back home. Bistron warned that Johann could never win, for he had barely finished his training and the gap between humans and dragons was simply too wide to cross. The walker, relieved to see another dragon that he already knew well, walked in carrying potions and told Jay he had made it back. Jay Huan gripped a massive hammer in his hands. 72 days passed with him fighting daily yet leaving not a single scratch on the dragon, who strangely refused to kill him despite his best efforts. No matter how many days go by, he must keep holding on to it because it's a truly special product that he knows will sell well. Bistin, a cultivator, whispered that he'd never seen anything like it before. The cultivator must make sure the product reaches the Great Land, where secondary processing acts like a filter to weed out the weak and train the best ones to shine. Once the chosen products start growing in the real game, extra care is given to water and feed them with nutrients so they can thrive. But one thing won't move on, it can be destroyed, and the soul of the person who died in the tower is still alive. But what if a soul gets hurt by mistake? The Reapers won't just stand there and do nothing. We need to grow and sell it fast, move up to the next level, and pay off the tower's purchase debt right away. This person is so special that even gods who have nothing to do with demons have reached out to him. Bistron asked the man what he wanted, realizing it was time to listen and begin the real game instead of worrying if everyone should follow the same rules. Bistron tightened his grip on the man's throat and demanded to know why he keeps insisting on his own way when Bistron is already ready to give him everything he needs. Juan promised to crush the monster and move on. But while Bistron shouted about how to get the man to play, Beaston warned that the universe is far more complex than anyone expected. Jihan nodded, admitting he understood the wild idea of parallel worlds and infinite multiverses. Beastron promised to explain that everything starts with one big world, but many other paths branch out from it. Earth is a tiny world in a vast system of dimensions, and it holds the special title of the 294th world. Bistron explained that inside the Tower of Nightmares, walkers can learn new skills, find cool items, and grow stronger by leveling up. They'll learn to work with the mighty Earth device and earn a ticket to step into a new world. Beast said that folks like him could steer the game, but when Jay Huang asked why they do that, Beast explained that nobody really cared about it anyway. Of all the strange worlds out there, why did the Tower of Nightmares choose to land right here on Earth? Something that definitely sparks curiosity in people. Juan and his family had to face this terrible fate simply because someone picked their names out of a hat. Jihin snapped at his conversation partner to stop and demanded to know why Bistin was running the Tower of Nightmares. Bistin laughed, saying that it was just like his hobby. The monster thought the man didn't believe him, but he actually had tons of different hobbies. Among the crowd stood people who just watched amazing walkers, while in a place called Paradise, monsters, demons, and humans all lived together in peace. Jan saw the urgent message from the Lord. There was no time left to destroy the man or speak with him, and when Bistron asked if the man finally believed, one simply decided it was all nonsense. Ji gulped down a potion to get stronger, convinced he had finally found his answer, yet he still couldn't beat that monster. One gripped his chest, wondering if he was dreaming, until a light burst from his fist, turning sugar cubes into strange new shapes. Could these tiny specks be the pieces that build the entire world? It didn't matter what they looked like, because he grasped the truth right away. Jai asked Bistron, "Who is the monarch? Is he the leader?" And the monster saw that he had finally caught the man's attention. Monarchs watch over the vast world, and only those who win the game are allowed to join them and receive their powerful help. Bistron warned that picking a king would change a person's entire future. Bistron promised that if the man would just listen, he'd swear on his own life that he would use all his power to help him reach the great monarch. But this would only happen if the person decided to play the game all the way to the finish line. Jchen joked that the monster sounded like a slick store salesman, but he was more than ready to do whatever he was hired to do. The walker said the game would begin in 10 days. 9 days went by while Juan trained hard in hand-to-hand combat, but Bistron watched him fidgeting. Sure, he was just trying to get attention. Beast figured he just needed to wait a bit longer for it all to end, even though he'd been tricked into buying this tower by those lying scoundrels. They say the Lord built the tower himself, and the seller called it a huge profit on such an ancient first-generation building that no one could guess how old it really was. Since the tower wasn't advanced enough to save anyone's progress if they quit training, Beaston decided to force everyone to shake it off and escape on their own if they couldn't get out. The Beast convinced himself he couldn't leave the game because of that tower. Beastron believed once more that everything would end by tomorrow. The monster asked the man if he remembered everything he was told, and Jay Huang said he did. Bistin was so thrilled after waiting so long that he couldn't help but cry. The monster stopped in its tracks, wondering what the man was up to, until Juan answered that he was now hunting Bistin because the game had finally begun. After that strange battle with glowing particles, the walker found his sword fighting harder than ever, as if every swing woke him up to a new, strange feeling. Up on the 91st floor, a special plant known as the Black Iron Tree stood waiting, while Bistron whispered that he'd never seen such a walker before, noting that things should have happened sooner to make life easier for everyone. Jihin was held captive and asked the monster what it planned to do, and the monster named Bistron said Jihin couldn't finish the game without his say-so. Bistron told us he'd already quit trying to change the man's mind. Byron wondered why the man thought the training would go on, since the Tower of Nightmares was set to shut itself down exactly 100 days after the training ended. The monster said the man had to stay alive and join the game. Ji Huang whispered to Beaston that his true name across all the lands was Sanctuary of Teasing, a being who had walked 184 worlds over 784 years and now faced his final duty of picking his last companions before handing himself over to the dark mathematician known as the Black Monarch. Beastron was shocked and wondered how the man had figured it out. Jay Huang realized he was the very gift the monster had been waiting for all along. Beastron was furious at the man's defiance and shouted that it couldn't happen, so the game instantly reset. Our hero started to doubt everything, wondering if it was all a dream, if the monster could truly kill him, or if he could even come back to life as the world around him began to break apart into tiny pieces and strange words. After hesitating for a long time, one finally found complete certainty, broke through to understanding, and the strict time limits disappeared. Bistron told the man he would stop pitying him and urged him to surrender before it was too late. The monster confessed that the man had accomplished so much in this world in such a short time. Beastron warned the man that he still had to play the game, and his tricks would only make his own situation even worse. But the monster quickly realized this wasn't just a reboot. Jae Hang stepped up to Beastron one last time and demanded he listen closely, insisting that people are not just items to be sold or turned into game pieces with a simple price tag at his command. The man said he was done with the monster's plan, so the walker lifted his sword high above the monster's head. Jae Hwan declared once more that he would keep tearing the tower apart and rising higher, shattering the mortal world built by those villains. Beastron told the man to stop because he saw nothing above, but Johan argued that there was definitely something higher up. Jahin felt his arrival wasn't a mistake, and he couldn't stop wondering if the Tower of Nightmares was truly built by that demon at the top of the illusion tree. Jan knew records existed for Mork, the Tower of Nightmares creator, while the walker hinted they were at the Tree of Illusion's roots, prompting Beastron to ask what Jahan was thinking, and Jahan replied that if there were roots, there had to be a trunk too. If he smashed through the ceiling to make a path above, Beaston warned that his tower wouldn't allow such a thing, and though the search for other walkers in the Tower of Nightmares has begun, none have been found yet. A man standing deep inside an ancient forest said he had finally found it. A host of monsters suddenly sprang out to face the armed warrior. The fight was so bloody that everyone was destroyed, and the warrior said the monsters here weren't actually that strong. After the fierce monsters arrived, weird green things showed up and one of them demanded to know what the man had done. But since they spoke in gibberish, he couldn't understand a word they said. Maybe they were whispering about the monster's big horn on his back, so the man decided to strike a deal. He would hand them that thing, and in return, they would tell him what this place was. But the deal didn't happen, so the young man had to fight those creatures, knocking one onto its back, pointing his sword at it, and demanding to know where it was. Juan thought the green creature was weak until it was destroyed without giving him a single clue, proving that these monsters are far from simple. Jihan still couldn't figure out what was here, so he dragged the remains of the destroyed monsters out of the way. The system told the player to use a backpack for their gear, but the guy figured the system had broken after he left the Tower of Nightmares. Jihi foolishly believed he could reach into other worlds, but he was wrong. He was grateful to have access to information, including crystals and a special spirit stone that could grow stronger. This crystal's color was different, yet its magic was the same, and since someone here makes these stones, they must be very valuable. While digging through his things, Jawan found a map of the Tree of Illusions and Chaos, which made him realize the tower guy had kept this secret from him. A woman walked right up to the monster, with others trailing behind her. The woman apologized, promising to find a new hunting spot so she wouldn't hurt anyone, but the warrior replied that her beauty was the only thing that saved her this time. The warrior perched on the rock slipped right by everyone, hiding in the shadows as he watched them. Juan sensed the girl was tougher than the rest, yet something kept them apart, and if things stayed this way, they might die before they ever figured out how to escape the Tower of Nightmares with their lives. A monster lunged at a warrior, and the girl cried out for Hyun to watch his step. Juan had no choice but to step in and sank into a medium lunge to smash the monster. The girl asked who he was, wondering if they could take him along after he destroyed Big Horn, and Jahan said he didn't mind while she noticed the special trophy horn hanging behind his back. The warriors realized they needed at least 10 of them to bring down Big Horn, the terrifying beast Juan had slain with 5 horns, proving that the more horns a monster had, the stronger it became. The girl asked our hero who he was, reminding us that chaos isn't a simple world where anyone can take down Big Horn with just a quick lunge. So Jae-hwan had to ask what chaos really meant. One warrior stepped forward to ask the man why he was there and if his name was Juong. The warrior shook his head, remarking that such an easy victory was rare, and wondered if they could truly claim the monster's body since the stranger claimed he was just passing through yet tore the thick-horned beast apart without even trying. The woman couldn't use her own skills or powers, which meant this guy's abilities must be something completely outside the normal rules. The girl explained that chaos isn't easy, that the world only has a few moments to change, and that no one could take down Big Horn with just a quick push. Jihan asked once more what chaos means, leaving the girl surprised and wondering if he was joking or just asking a strange question. The girl was shocked that the man seemed to ignore her question about who he was, even though John insisted he understood her perfectly. Once he stepped into the tower, the protagonist felt that everything his life on Earth had ever been suddenly meant nothing. He made new friends and shared unforgettable moments with them, but after graduation, they vanished like a mirage, and even if he had started over, they wouldn't have remembered him or the journey they shared. Jihan told the girl he had no memory of anything, and she wondered if that meant he had lost his mind. A strange sword suddenly appeared in the guy's hands, and the girl realized that true power lies in the weapon itself, not just in one's strength. The other warriors were stunned, wondering if this really was a super weapon and why this guy decided to show it off. She thought the man had ruined her mission, so instead of relying on him, she decided to make an offer of her own. The girl named Mino explained the chaos, and they started talking about the vicious Red Fox squad. Jaheen wondered if the girl really wanted him to handle these guys, but Mino told him those men would soon find him and teach him everything he needed to know. One warrior pointed out that night was falling, so they decided to rest there instead of risking a dangerous journey in the dark. I figured the map said a village should be right around the corner. One of the warriors told the boss that this guy didn't have enough energy to pass the test. He only beat Big Horn because he found a super weapon deep in the dangerous abyss where the Tree of Illusions grows. Jihan guessed these folks were up to no good and would be scared if they found out he had this weapon, so maybe someone was on the hunt for it. At one point, one noticed someone approaching him, and the girl, surprised to see him lying there, urged him to use his sword against the attackers who were already coming. Jan explained he had no sword because he'd lent it to a stranger for the night shift, leaving the girl shocked by his careless trust. Soon Jae-hwan and Mino were boxed in by attackers, one of whom sneered that he'd find a good use for their weapon and warned them never to forget their deadly alliance with the Red Fox clan. The girl questioned whether those scoundrels truly desired bloodshed, and in that moment, Jae-hwan finally saw who she really was. The villains charged at the propagandist to destroy him, but the girl pushed them back with such force that she told them they had just doomed themselves to a terrible fate. The villain leader realized right away that Mino was a genuine witch, proving her attack on them wasn't just bad luck. One of the bad guys shouted out to find out who had summoned the ghost warriors. Mino just shrugged and said it didn't matter, since those scoundrels had already destroyed many newcomers who didn't know the rules, and he was certain that many people in Chaos wanted them dead. The villain sneered, telling the ghost warriors not to bother helping such pathetic folks. It was almost certainly a special case, meaning the witch would die right here and now. Mino couldn't believe that the scoundrel was counting only on super weapons. The villain grinned, saying he had another plan, as about 40 more clan members stepped out from the bushes, and he asked if she really thought he would face a ghost witch and a man who once took down a giant horn with just one hit. Another warrior stepped up and admitted that if he'd known he could grab the super weapon so easily, he never would have had to go this far. Mino was startled to see Black Fox, realizing that strange things must have been happening lately in his life. The Black Fox, who led the Red Fox clan, stood right at the 3rd level. The clan leader said that more than half of his men had come together just for her. Mino knew she couldn't beat the clan leader on her own, especially since he was already on the 3rd level. The girl whispered to Johan that she couldn't keep him safe. He'd be better off running, but she tossed him the Nightmare Stone anyway. Mino told us that this was the Stone of Return, a special gem that let anyone travel instantly to the nearest fortress, and sadly, she was the only one who had it. Jae-hwan realized the stone didn't send him back in time, but kept him safe right now, so he asked the girl if she'd ever get a chance to go back and if she'd take it, leaving Mino surprised and wondering if it was the right moment to ask. The girl said she had worked hard her whole life and if she were to die, it would be today with no chance of ever going back to the past. Jae-hwan pulled his sword from its sheath and declared that she would not die today. The protagonist unleashed the Flame King's 14th form and cast the Forgotten spell, shocking Mino into realizing her mistake and his overwhelming power. The girl asked who he really was, leaving Johan stunned as he wondered if she had forgotten him, since he was the only one he knew who ever suffered from such memory slips. Mino ordered her to give back the stone she'd given him, but Jahan said she had already lost it. Mino's face turned red with rage because he couldn't believe he had lost something so special. The girl looked all around but couldn't find the stone, and she wondered if she was just wasting her time. One told her he was human, but she thought he was just making fun of her. Sitting by the night fire, Mino wondered if being human was truly enough, and the next morning, as he walked the forest road, he asked the young man if he had really lost all memory of Earth when he stepped into Chaos. She told him that he might be lucky just to forget something. Johan was stunned, asking Mino what was good about losing her memory, and she replied that many locals would envy her, hinting she knew how everyone ended up in Chaos before he asked how she got there. The girl warned him that if he thought he understood her words, he'd wish he had never asked the moment she gave her answer. When the young people reached the Gorgon Fortress, Juan guessed it looked just like the first floor of the Tower of Nightmares. Everyone begged for help, and Juan, who knew that look all too well, saw it on their faces. Mino told him their numbers had swelled 1,000-fold, he finally got it, and she begged him to stop asking how she got into the Chaos. The girl warned that dying on Earth leads to chaos, but dying here means the end, turning your soul into food for the Tree of Illusions. So an officer stepped in and made everyone line up to start working. The officer told one person that he had died because he was weak and then threw a cloak over his naked body. Officer James asked Mino why she was at the north entrance, and she simply said she had dropped by and, since they already knew each other, asked them to let her through quickly. James whispered that everything had changed, and now they were told to check the identity of every single person who walked into the fortress. Mino admitted that she had totally forgotten her ID. She pushed Big Horn's horn into the officer's hand as her payment. The officer tucked away his badge after confirming the girl's ID, then turned to Jay to ask for his papers. But Janu just shook his head and said he had none, leaving them all wondering what to do next. Mino gazed at the young man and told him that she was in a tough spot, but if he asked for help, she promised to give it to him. James warned that walking into the fortress without an ID was a big no-no. Juan told Mina he got it, and she started to wonder what he'd do next. Jihan drew his sword and shut down the guards near the officer, leaving Mina stunned and wondering if he truly had that kind of power, while Juan asked if she would come with him. Suddenly, the most famous checkpoint captain, a stubborn and stern man named Carlton, appeared to tell Mino that they were in trouble. The captain turned to James and asked what was happening right there. The officer said a man was trying to sneak into the fortress without papers, but the captain shook his head and said it was no way possible, leaving Juan to ask why. The captain made it clear that if he couldn't be sure of who the visitor was, he had the power to turn them away. Jai thought the captain was enforcing the fortress's rules. Our hero boldly declared he cared nothing for the law, gripped his sword hilt tight, and declared that he needed no ID card and would not confirm his identity. The captain was shocked that his trick failed, meaning he'd have to lock up the young man and slap heavy iron chains on him. The soldiers stared in wonder as the stranger broke free from his chains without a struggle, and the captain demanded to know how he did it. Jan asked Mino if he could do what she did, and the girl looked surprised, wondering exactly how she managed it. Ji tossed something into the captain's hand. James screamed at the young man, claiming he had bribed the captain and ordering him to be put to death right then. Captain Carlton asked the young man if his name was Jae Huang, and when he confirmed it, the captain explained that he had been waiting because he was a messenger from gossip. A message came through saying that the damage to his soul had gone past 15% and he needed medicine right away. The captain was shocked to see the soul affected, but he told the girl she knew exactly what to do, and Mino nodded to agree. Jae Huan asked what soul destruction was, and Mino was shocked that he knew nothing about it. Soul destruction is a slow sickness that quietly eats away at the spirits of anyone who gets swept up in the chaos. That's why the big horn is so valuable, because Mino remembered James lighting up when he learned it's the only thing that can save a soul from being destroyed. The girl thanked the young man for helping her get the horn. Captain Carlton peered into Yone's eye to check for a soul, and found none to destroy. The captain told Jian he'd return the stone the young man had given him, leaving Jian confused since he thought the captain needed it. The captain warned that the spirit stone wasn't for just anyone, but Jian argued he wasn't a messenger at all. Juan and Mino headed to the city, and James asked the captain if it was safe to let them go. Carlton asked James if he knew what a spirit stone was, and James explained that it was a special object that made your spiritual power stronger. The captain stared at his blistered hand while the officer explained that the spirit stone was to blame. No one can move the stone except the gossip messenger, and even though the captain isn't sure the young man is that messenger, he still has the power to control the stone. James wondered if he could trust the man, and the captain answered that he trusted his own soul more than anything else. The captain explained that the device can only miss one instance where a soul is destroyed. This occurs when someone's soul shines brighter than anyone else in the chaos. It wasn't about whether he was a messenger, but that he held the spirit stone, so the fortress would make its own choice, and when James asked if the fortress owner's sickness was involved, the captain simply said he didn't know. The captain whispered that James might be the one taking a secret bribe to let these people walk right through. Jaheen felt lost in the city's tangled streets, but Mino stayed right by his side to guide him through. As the captain saw the young travelers off, he reminded Mino not to forget his ID, noting that this one time he'd let it slide because Jae Huan asked, but he made it clear that bribes would never be tolerated. The captain hoped Mino would change his mind, and the officer said goodbye to them as they headed for Gorgon's fortress. Jae Huan was shocked to see the spell last so long, but the captain looked like someone you'd be wise not to anger, so the young man simply told a passerby he was looking for a blacksmith. The stranger shook his head and said he had no idea what had happened. Seeing that the girl had finally figured it out, Juan gave her a quick nod for luck and turned to walk away. Mina was furious that he walked away after she had just shown how much she regretted leaving the fortress. Juan told her he had helped her get through it, so now she would just get in his way. The young man told her that they were too different and that she needed to go her own way. Mina was furious that he didn't even know where to go, so Juan said he'd ask people passing by and that he needed a horse. Mino told him she knew where to find a horse and would take him there. Jian explained that his first move was to focus on just one person. Strangers stepped up to the young folks and asked if they had the hot sword. Mino told them to pack up and run if they wanted to live. When one of the villains saw the youngest among them hit puberty, they flew into a rage over Miho's rude behavior. The villain growled that unless they wanted to get hurt, they'd better hand over the sword or pay the price to stay alive. The biggest villain asked his gang if they could fix this trouble without fighting. The villain swung his axe and growled that they'd pay for being rude. Jay Huang told us that he ran into a bunch of noisy folks on his way and silenced them with a swift swipe of his sword. Mino was amazed that he could knock out anyone with just one strike, while Jay Huan simply replied that he only knew how to lunge, lightly, normally, or with full strength. Mino questioned why he dealt the final hit and tore the roof apart, and Jay Huan replied that an opponent had turned invisible in the fight, so he shattered the roof just to scare him. Mino couldn't believe it, wondering how a regular person would blow up a roof just to scare someone, while Jay Huan stood there just as shocked, asking if that really was how things worked. The young people walked up to Twilight Fall, the most famous forge in Gorgon. The blacksmith named Neen offered to help the young people but reminded them they'd have to wait, no matter when they placed their order. Mina was shocked to find so many orders, but Naven explained that since only the deputy owner was working at the smithy today, they had a lot to get done. He suggested that buying a ready-made item was a smarter move than waiting around for one to be built. The blacksmith showed her a dagger carved from Keto horn, explaining that it would be ready once he carved a slot into the handle. One of the young men stepped up to help carve the dagger. The blacksmith, Michael Garnard, asked the young men if they were sure they could handle the tough antler, since he was their owner's assistant, and knew it was a very hard material. Michael saw that the young people were eager and knew that whoever could carve a notch into the handle would get to run the forge for a day. The blacksmith shook his head and declared the young people too weak to even leave a scratch on the task. A customer stepped into the smithy, but Naven stopped him from entering while one asked if he could try, and Michael Garnard wondered if this was the wandering blacksmith, only for the blacksmith to say it was impossible and that the stranger was wrong to think it was easy. So our hero declared he could do it because he was extremely skilled and knew that a horn from a four-horned animal was a difficult material to work with. After finishing the job, Jawan asked if he could be the blacksmith's helper for the day. The knife snapped and shattered, sending the blacksmith into a furious rage over the priceless horn the boy had just broken. Jaheen admitted that while the material was easy to break, making a slit in the handle was tough, and he felt bad about it. The blacksmith couldn't believe the boy thought a simple apology could fix such an incredibly expensive mistake. The blacksmith stood there, wondering what he could tell the customer about the weapon that was now nothing but broken pieces. The young man promised to replace it with a better horn, leaving the surprised blacksmith wondering where he could find something so costly. Jihad pulled a five-horned horn from his pocket, leaving the blacksmith staring in total surprise. Jihan worried if his only unicorn horn was enough for the job, but the blacksmith gave him the thumbs up, saying it was just what they needed. Our hero sighed with relief that he could finally work a bit in the smithy again, though he still had to play the part of a buyer. The blacksmith proudly declared that their forge in Fortress Gorgon was the finest in the land, thanks to its top craftsmen and tools, which meant the young man, now the master's helper, could use whatever he needed. Jihan thanked the blacksmith for the chance, while Michael asked the boy where he found the horn. Jan told the shocked blacksmith that he had slain the five-horned beast all by himself, and the assistant nodded in agreement. The blacksmith stared in shock at the boy's claim that he'd done it all by himself, but Johann insisted he needed a hand since this was his very first time crafting a sword sheath. The blacksmith stared in shock, wondering if the young man truly meant to use the horn of the Garnick. Jay handed his sword to the blacksmith, who stared in surprise wondering if it was a copy of the ice dragon's blade. The blacksmith shook his head, saying that crafting a scabbard for such a weapon was far too hard, so he suggested forging a brand new sword from the horn instead. The blacksmith was shocked to discover that what he was holding was actually a weapon of pure spirit. The blacksmith saw that a powerful force was taking the sword apart to make it stronger for a higher race. Because the sword was evolving and changing shape, the young man would have to give it a new name by the time it was finished. The blacksmith saw the steel vanished into the blade, but Jay Huang said it was just fine since he still had plenty more. The blacksmith asked the deputy for help, but the young man just wanted to watch him work with the metal. The blacksmith answered that he was ready to prove just how skilled he was. Inside the fortress, the commander learned that the bandits were all gone, but then the target disappeared, and Minister Gorgon Yen Seber demanded to know how that could have happened. The man said he couldn't explain it because he blacked out and found himself waking up on the roof. The minister wondered if his target could sense him, how someone could detect such a powerful hidden skill, meaning he himself must be at least a master. Tubber called out that they needed to gather more people to help hunt down the fortress. The whole tavern held its breath as everyone watched the news. The news anchor said it was time to say goodbye, but she wanted to talk about the latest video on the lone hero from the 99th floor before everyone wondered where he was now. Someone whispered that the tower had stopped the cultivation, likely because its owner tried to cheat and got caught. Though rumors say he fled with everything, it's impossible to clear the tower alone, and it would be strange for a demon with such power to destroy everything and leave. Someone said it made sense to sell everything before walking away, because nobody just leaves their house behind. Mino burst into the tavern with such flair that everyone turned to stare at him. A customer asked if she'd come alone, and Mino quickly told him to back off, so he realized it was best to leave her alone. Mino ordered a huge mug of alcohol to drown her sorrows, ranting to herself about how crazy and arrogant the guy was acting. Mrs. Claire, the tavern owner, told Mino to calm down because even though she wasn't drunk yet, she was already spouting nonsense. Claire pointed out that there were plenty of other men around, so why did she keep her eyes locked on just one? Mino said that when she saw him, he became a real nuisance, smashing everything in his way and swinging his sword like he didn't care about a thing. Mino chimed in to say that he speaks in very strange ways. Mino explained that everyone was fighting for their lives with everything they had, so this stranger just showed up out of nowhere and kept looking down on her. Claire tried to calm the girl down, telling her she was acting like a child and that she shouldn't even go near that guy. Claire warned that if Mino stayed, she would die, just as a bird crashed into the tavern carrying a letter from Captain Carlton addressed to the Dark Forest Terror, Mino. As the girl unrolled the scroll, a chill of worry settled over her. A bystander grabbed the girl's arm and demanded to know if she was truly a witch of slaughter, explaining that while he disliked her rudeness, he was too busy for formalities and needed Mino's help right now. The blacksmith who worked with the horn told me he had to stop because his tools wouldn't listen and the material was too hard for him, but Jae Huang said it wasn't about how high your level was, it was about how well you understood what you were doing. Rebirth begins with a doubting power strong enough to shatter the world, followed by the courage to see and accept what remains in its ruins. The horn twisted and changed its shape right before his eyes, leaving the blacksmith confused and wondering what was going on. The blacksmith and the walker stood face to face with a giant monster that had burst out of the horn right before them. Jan explained that since the blacksmith had volunteered to help, he had to do the job right. The blacksmith, shaking with fear, couldn't believe his eyes, wondering if the monster was truly the legendary Garnick, and if the hero had dared to fight it with such weak skills. So terrified he just needed to snap out of his dream. The blacksmith screamed for help and burst out of his forge, only to find a terrifying sea of skeletons and undead monsters blocking his way, making him wonder how he ended up in such a nightmare world. In this world, some lines are impossible to cross, for no matter how many people try, they can never break free from their own limits or reach the level of a nightmare. The blacksmith sighed to himself, feeling too old to forge Gorik's horn, wishing he had arrived sooner. The blacksmith whispered that the walker was waiting for the nightmare forge's owner, but he'd been gone for ages, leaving only a sorry failure like him who wasn't even a true apprentice and had built not a single tower, though Jia Huang said it didn't matter. The guy said the blacksmith was skilled with weapons and urged him not to quit, even though the blacksmith had already tried hundreds of times. Ji said that if that's true, he'll have to try it millions of times. The blacksmith watched him keep trying over and over, never once giving up. After mastering every blacksmith skill and confidently declaring he could fix any weapon in the Tower of Nightmares, strange thoughts began to creep into his mind the moment he succeeded. He stopped chasing near-perfect success and instead ran away from even a tiny chance of failing. She knew this man worked harder than anyone else, but did he really understand the secret behind his craft? The nightmare craft skill was here from the very start, as natural as fire and water. Yet can humans truly grasp the world's secrets, or is it better to just wonder why we even try to explain them? Jen asked the blacksmith if he really meant that the tools could take on spiritual power and learn to work with the horn by themselves. The young man wondered why the students couldn't master the skill if it was so simple, and the blacksmith answered that they just hadn't learned it fully yet. The blacksmith figured that if the secret to the craft was this easy, there was no reason to spend his life learning it. Ji Han was shocked to see the blacksmith keep using a skill he knew nothing about, and when the master asked if anyone truly understood the secret behind it all, he demanded to know how the craft actually worked. Jan asked the blacksmith to examine the horn carefully and tell him exactly what he saw. The boy saw that hard work had made the blacksmith's life steadier and felt that was fine, yet he wondered if the master truly understood anything at all, because if you couldn't do it no matter how many times you tried, the problem wasn't you, it was the world. The blacksmith stood stunned, never having seen the hammers work that way before. The monster had warned that the blacksmith's way was perfect for nightmares but deadly for people, so what would be safe for us? The monster growled that he should be grateful for his human birth, for people are stuck as apprentices forever. The blacksmith gripped his head in confusion, wondering if the stranger truly meant for him to fight the whole world, especially when Zhou Huang said that hard work always pays off and there was nothing wrong with that idea. In the end, the world he knows makes him doubt himself, but the blacksmith is older yet still strong enough to keep fighting. Jan urged the master to take a closer look, reminding him that it's better to see for himself than to believe everything he hears. The blacksmith wondered if the stranger had always known about this rankless, skill-less, and level-free world. In this land where no lies exist, how could he have stayed sane as the blacksmith hammered the chisel down with all his strength? He questioned if he had truly followed the path, but his companion confirmed he'd found what he needed and it was time to leave. So the man admitted he loved the scabbard and all that was left was to pick a name for it. The blacksmith offered to suggest one. He found his inspiration in the words of martial arts and chose the name Loner for his sword, a title that perfectly matched his ability to find peace in solitude. As the blacksmith and his students saw our hero off, they all wished him a safe journey. The blacksmith asked the young man how the world he saw him looked like, and Jae Hwan simply said that to him, the blacksmith was just a real person. The young man kept walking without glancing back, for Jaehoon lived in a lonely world that no one could truly understand. John didn't turn around when he asked the girl why she kept following him, and she shot back that he didn't seem to get that she wasn't doing it for the wrong reasons. Juin wondered if she was up to something again, and Mino asked how he knew. Mino promised she would handle him, leaving Jian baffled and wondering what good that would actually do her. She promised that if things went that way, she'd take his soul stone and live every moment to the very end. Mino saw that her words didn't impress the young man, so she just handed him a bag of his clothes as a simple apology, so he could at least look like a normal person again. Mino asked the young man what he would do if he never ran into that nightmare. Jahan said the blacksmith told him where to find it, so he had to grab the Tree of Illusion and then head to the Abyss path, which left Mino wondering why he needed it in the first place. If he's lucky enough to reach the Abyss, he knows exactly what happened to the few who ever made it back as champions, and Wan insists he won't try to return like them. Mino roared in anger, screaming to find out who he was and what made him think he had the right to do such a thing. Mino wouldn't settle down, acting on every wild idea without caring what others thought, even as the girl called Jahan arrogant and heartless for treating people like nothing. She told them that they were all just people, even if they didn't have the same strength. Jian swore he'd never go back to the past, not even if they died right now, while the girl's inner voice warned her to stay out of trouble because breaking her promise would kill the old woman, so she had to flatter him and lure him in with sweet talk. Wan saw the people across the street and realized they were holding a hostage, but even though he knew he had to risk everything to save them, he understood that there was no point in trying. He believed that no matter how many lives he saved, the world's true nature would stay the same, but his doubts pushed him to uncover the real story behind everything. In a world where cash and secrets run everything and folks trade their souls for cash and clout, Jae Hwan chose to fight back by hunting down the nightmare itself. Mino spoke up and said that from where he stood, he wasn't human anymore. Wan told the girl that their paths had parted because he couldn't stay with her just to chase a goal. Mino's anger grew until he shouted they'd never meet again, leaving Jian to wonder how this woman could seem so much like a real person. The villain across the street realized she had betrayed them, so he rushed to report the betrayal, and now their nightmare plans were completely ruined. Mino stopped at the door, wondering how things had gone so wrong, while the girl stepped inside to apologize to her aunt for making her wait. Inside, everything was gone, a fact Claire had known all along, and if only she had stopped Mino sooner, a giant warrior holding a sword would not be standing right there in the middle of the tavern. Claire whispered that the girl might die, but the criminal shoved the old woman and told her to be quiet. The thug demanded to know why the Witch of Slaughter arrived alone and broke their deal, revealing her true form as the eldest of the Gum Chunban brothers, Zhangya. Mino whispered to the big man that he was far more innocent than he looked, wondering if he'd ever seen a witch keep her word, noting that Jae Hwan would not show up, while the girl added that this guy had gone to destroy the world. Ja screamed that the Slaughter Witch had lost her mind and told his warriors to charge. In the deep woods, she became known as the Slaughter Witch for trapping wild creatures, but Jenna wondered if she could really handle it now, and said she deserved a better name. Hila noted that the room was so soundproof that no one could hear her, giving her a chance to stop screaming, but she realized she had to get this guy there before it was too late. Mino warned that the dark forest would soon take its revenge, while Jenny insisted they mustn't make things up, knowing that by the time they reached the Gorgon fortress, Mino and the old woman would already be dead. Jenny shouted that he would rip Mino apart with just his bare hands. Mina just realized she wanted to go back in time. The tavern door burst open and one stepped through, prompting Mino to mutter that she hated being barged in on, especially since he was the one planning to destroy the world. So why had he come here, and was he really here to save her? Jihan said the clothes weren't good enough for him, which surprised Mina and made her wonder if he had really returned just because they didn't fit. Gina questioned the hero about his spiritual weapon, only to discover that this very person had somehow made their lives much easier. Jan asked the bandits if they knew where the nightmare was and demanded they bring him there right away. Jana whispered that the stranger was crazy, because the rumors about Wan breaking the fortress rules had just come true. Mino warned Wan to stay careful, reminding him that Jana on the 4th level is a force not to be underestimated. Gina shouted that the young man was acting too proud, so she grabbed her friends and charged into the battle to show him what true power felt like. After the attack failed, Jinga stared in shock, realizing this wasn't just any beginner. Wondering how he dodged so well, and if he was truly the champion of the abyss. Jenna whispered that until now, only Purog could dodge his blows, making everyone wonder if they truly stood on the same level. Jania grabbed Claire by the collar and told him she couldn't promise her safety. Claire urged the young man to attack without delay while Jania slapped the woman across the face. Mino told Claire to be patient because they would save her. Then he asked Juan for help, which left one shocked since the girl was asking someone who had come to destroy everyone, friend or foe, in his path. Mino grabbed the young man's shoulder and told him that Claire was human too. Claire screamed, "What were they waiting for? We have to strike now," because Jahan realized they were no longer human. The knights on the sidelines watched as a mighty beam of light shot up from the tavern, tearing through the roof, and they wondered what secrets were being kept inside. The bandit whispered to his boss, Genie, that they had a big problem because a stranger had shattered their silence. The knights crashed into the tavern, and their leader immediately shouted, "What is happening here?" Jachan told us that the captain had just arrived to stop the man in front of us from breaking the fortress rules. Jay Huan jabbed a finger at Gina and declared that she had broken the fourth rule of the Gorgon fortress. He likely planned to seize this place and end the nightmare along with the world, but Mino asked in shock if that wasn't the villain's own idea, only for the leader to declare that hostage-taking and property damage meant immediate arrest with no chance of getting out early, prompting Jania to scream that they had to run now. Captain Carlton refused to let them leave, chaining the criminals with silver and declaring that any fight back was against the old lords. Jenya struggled against him, but Captain Carlton quickly overpowered the villain and took him into custody. Gina declared he was surrendering, and Carlton called it a smart move, only to note that while Gina carried crystals in his hand, Captain Carlton was just as religious as he was foolish, before the crystals vanished into smoke and the room plunged into near-total darkness. Jenya and his friends got away safely, and the bad guy admitted he didn't think he'd have to do something so desperate. One of the criminals told the boss that a comrade had breathed in the black smoke, which made Gina furious since he had warned them to wear their masks carefully. How could they dare to blast smoke without his say-so? Was the Witch of Slaughter truly that strong? Hukel ran, and the leader of the Forbidden Paradise clan shouted that he had promised him this girl. Jana shook her head and said it wasn't the witch, but instead, they had been caught by heavy silver chains. Hukel asked if the captain was still around, but the villain said he'd likely died from the smoke. Hyal spotted Mino and Jian walking out of the bar and asked, "Who is that man?" Jana simply said he would find out himself, wondering how his spirit stayed strong even after being surrounded by the dark smoke. He had never seen a messenger with antennas before, and now he wondered if this really was him and why he had come here. Jahan didn't mean to use such a powerful trick, but when he tapped into the strength of Garnet, the head of a huge monster suddenly rose above him. Hyal trembled in fear and asked, "What kind of monster is that?" Then he turned to say they would face it alone, while Jenny Ia cursed the clan chief as he ran away. Jana dropped to her knees before Jawan, shocked by what had just occurred, as the young man explained that his opponent could still live if he told them where Nightmare was hiding. Gina felt that giving up would make his life pointless because he would never be able to forgive the betrayal he faced. Jia said he didn't care, and with a swallow, he took the crystal, the soul stone, into his mouth. It might look like everyone in the chaos is hooked on drugs, but Mino says these aren't drugs at all. They're just a way to stop the soul from being destroyed because no one wants to die. Just then, Jenny Ia sprang into a giant monster that scared every villain away. Jen looked around and saw only undead creatures, wondering if that was all there was to this world, what could possibly be good here, and what he was truly afraid of if he could finally be free. But the monster was confused about how a plain man could end up in this world. Jay-chan replied, "Does it matter?" and wondered if everything could happen again. Yet he needed someone to help him understand the nightmare, all while wondering why the rain had started. As a soldier in the tavern urgently told the captain that the fortress needed to be warned. As Jay Huan looked at the girl, he found himself convinced she was truly human, which made him wonder why he couldn't bring himself to use his special skill against her. The young man made a cold choice. He would leave his heart behind and become a stone that nothing could move. Claire turned to Jay and asked if the girl could possibly make it. He warned that if her body kept breaking down after the gas poisoning, she wouldn't stand a chance. The fortress leaders announced that a dead body had been found right there, causing everyone to panic and run while they were told to leave immediately. Yet no one knew where to go. Soldiers showed up and started putting down the undead with ease. Claire asked if Mino had mentioned this guy and wondered if he was ready to break every rule in the book, admitting that she knew people just like him well. She explained that those who ended up here didn't stay because they were foolish, but because they simply had nowhere else to go. Claire admitted they were scared, but she wondered what kind of bravery it would take to break through those limits. She said this guy was always chasing something new. Maybe he was right, but she couldn't understand him because she didn't have the courage to face a dangerous young man who needed to leave. He has to go because while he brings hope to people, he also pushes them toward despair. Jihan asked the military how much medicine they had left, and the medic said most of it had been used trying to save Captain Carlton, so there was almost nothing left. Officer James yelled for every drop of medicine in the fort to be brought right away. Johan watched the medic crush a horn into powder, wondering if that was really how it worked, only for Captain Carlton to take the mixture and feel nothing, leaving everyone to doubt if even this legendary horn could save them. Jan asked James if they could bring the captain back to life if he died, and James just said he had no idea. Ji tried to bring the captain back to life, but James was furious, wondering how anyone could treat their master that way. Carlton opened his eyes to see Juan, called out his name, and begged to be the one to handle the situation, leaving the young man surprised because no one usually asks to be left alone. The captain said the law demanded that any decaying soul be destroyed, and Jan admired how dedicated Carlton was to his job, wishing there were more like him so he wouldn't still be trapped in the tower after 40 years. A message arrived saying the soul's destruction was at 94%, and the decay would start soon. Jahair, the leader of the demon squad, stepped into the room and commanded everyone to get out. Jahari explained that the fourth rule says he has to kill Carlton, the captain of the Northern Gate, plus one mystery person. Jay Huang stood his ground, refusing to let the man's plan happen, because he still needed to ask the captain some questions. Ji was shocked to see this man halt his sword blade with nothing but his bare hands. The captain of the evil squad claimed he didn't know his opponent, but he warned that Carlton would soon be dead, and if that happened, a terrible disaster would follow that had to be stopped. John grabbed the horn and declared he must help the captain, but the medic shouted that it was Garnet's horn, the only thing that could bring the captain back to life. Jihan smashed the precious horn into dust, and the medic screamed in horror, but Jay Huan quickly blew the powder into the captain and Mino's mouths, and James saw with relief that their health had finally stopped slipping away. Claire sprinted to the girl just as the medic warned that her low energy made her body rot faster, and with a terrifying message that her soul destruction had hit 99%. They knew decay was about to start. Jara gripped his sword again, and Claire told him to fetch Chanho, the only one who could deliver the fatal strike. Claire also mentioned that the dead man's blow might help destroy a soul. They were warned that the holy healer was reserved for true emergencies and should never be bothered for something so small. Ji stepped up to our hero and told him he wasn't in the mood to talk, demanding the young man move out of the way. Jichen promised to destroy the woman because she asked him to, but she screamed at him to stop as he hesitated, until an old man appeared, asked how the girl ended up in this mess, and then touched her to help. Jae-won stood stunned, wondering who this old stranger was, while the old man looked just as baffled, trying to figure out how this guy had ended up in his world. The old man asked in surprise, wondering how such a big soul could fit inside such a tiny brain. Jai knew his doubt couldn't touch this old man, the very source of the soul's destruction. The old man couldn't believe it when that guy managed to catch his sword. The old man screamed in fury at the stranger breaking his prized tricorn sword, daring anyone to act so bold in his world. The old man, known as the divine medic Chong Ho, explained that a beautiful woman was about to die, so it didn't matter who actually ran the fortress. The old man wondered why the young man had to stop his deadly strike and break his sword, for the sword was the only tool that could ever make that move work. When the old man spotted the young man's weapon, he asked where such a treasure came from, noting it was made from Garnick's horn. Jay Huang asked the old man if he could save the woman if he lent him his sword. The old man snatched the young man's sword and claimed he could handle it, leaving Chang Ho stunned that the stranger would give his weapon to just anyone he met while sounding so sure of himself. But that didn't matter now, because the sword hummed with a strange energy and felt like a perfect twin to its owner. Chung Ho gripped the sword with both hands, ready to find out just how powerful it really was. The young man felt like he was losing his mind, much like when he used his doubt skill, and couldn't believe the strange world could belong to that old man. The old man couldn't wield the young man's sword, so the young man took it for himself, and Chong Ho warned that such a strike was beyond anyone who didn't belong in his world. Juan admitted he couldn't match the dead man's strike and would fail to copy it exactly, so Chang Ho shouted at the young man to stop. Juan snapped at the old man to be quiet, reminding him this was the first time in his whole life that he had ever swung a sword to save someone else. Juan saw Mina as a fierce, stubborn killer with a soft heart who would never betray someone she loved. The young man said that Mino trusted everyone too much. Jae-won did everything right, and the destruction of the soul began to subside. The process of decay was stopped. Jahare was surprised. How is this possible? Claire whispered that the guy didn't seem so narrow-minded anymore, and she wondered who he really was. Ji wondered if the young man had truly learned the dead man's blow, or if it was actually a dead man's lunge, and though he asked the divine medic for confirmation, the old man simply admitted that the young man had succeeded. However, Chung Ho said that his deadly strike wasn't a skill, which meant no one else could copy it, and so this guy was just like him, an awakened one. Only a handful of them have broken free from the system, choosing to reject its rules and gain incredible power instead. These few awakened ones hold a power so great it dwarfs all the chaos in the lands. Ji was shocked to see this warrior might also be awakened, but Changho told him not to judge too soon. Jair claimed that if anyone else could land that blow, they could save the fortress lord. A man walked in, announced he had the fortress's permission for everyone to scatter, and revealed himself as the captain of the Shadow Squad, the internal security team. The old man was shocked that the Shadow Squad had nothing to do with the dead and couldn't figure out why they were there, until their captain knelt before our hero to show respect to the Herald's messenger. The captain asked to be taken to the fortress and wanted to know what the Destruction Squad and the Divine Medic were doing there. The leader of the Shadow Squad spoke our hero's name, saying at last they were face to face. The man told them that before they spoke, he wanted to introduce himself as Jürgen Chiver, the head of internal affairs at Gorgon Fortress. Jürgen Chiver asked straight out if Jie Huang was a herald's messenger, and our hero said no, which made the Shadow Squad captain happy since that was exactly what he had always suspected. The old man said the Soul Stone could give you spiritual power and make you part of the messengers group, so if the guy had no link to them, where did he get the stone? Jen said he found it, but when Jer asked about the stone's owner, Jen replied he was dead, leaving the Destruction Squad captain shocked at how anyone dared kill a representative of the 5 Great Lands, until June admitted he did it. Ji was furious, leaving Jürgen Chiver to urge the captain to calm down and figure out the reason behind his anger. Jan claimed they struck him down first because they wanted his horns, forcing him to defend himself. Jürgen Chiver felt the messengers were too greedy with the supplies they took. Jürgen Chiver leaned in and asked Shi Wang to tell him the full story of how he ended up in chaos. After hearing the tale, the captain summed it up. The young man stumbled into chaos, found a soul stone by mistake, wandered into the Gorgon fortress, got into trouble with the Divine Medic, and somehow learned a deadly attack he'd never seen before. The captain let it go that he had seen right through the boy. Chung Ho was stunned. He wondered if Jürgen Chiver really believed every word he said. The captain told the old man that to win anyone's trust, you must first learn to trust yourself. Jürgen Klinsmann asked if Yong was actually a person. The boy thought it over, chose not to play the game, and vanished from the world, bringing down the Nightmare Tower until his soul lost its shape, causing the Tree of Illusion to mistake him for a ghost and cast him into chaos. His body was still on Earth, leaving the captain wondering how he could be alive while Jürgen Chiver realized he had stumbled straight into chaos. Chiver claimed that no one in the chaos would describe their death that way, making you wonder if this guy is hiding his true face just because he's scared of getting threatened. The captain offered his apology, admitting his people had been watching the young man for 4 days, but Zhang simply knew all along. Jürgen Chiver admitted that the young man was just as strong and alert as they feared, making it hard to watch him, but they did manage to learn a few things. The targets were marked as deadly, their power was a mystery, but their destruction cost hundreds of millions, and now Jae Hwan wondered if he truly knew what kind of monster people like him really were. Chung Ho called them weirdos, the old man thought they were crazy, and Jürgen Chiver couldn't tell if they were heroes or villains. The captain spoke of the young man as a hero, saying that true heroes always possess special qualities. Jürgen Chiver spotted that this man wasn't well known, and was being kept in the shadows, by someone who seemed to fear what he might say. Hadn't he stepped in, Jae Hwan's paperwork would have been a mess. Jürgen Chiver explained that an unstoppable force had pushed the young man into chaos, even though he never meant to lose control. Jian felt a strange force chasing him and began to wonder if it was one of the 12 mighty rulers of the Great Lands, wondering just how powerful they really were. The captain promised he wouldn't ask the young man's name or demand payment for the damage to Gorgon Fortress, saying they were ready to protect him. Can the walls of the Gorgon Fortress really hold up against the power of the 12 kings from all the Great Lands? Jürgen Chiver asked the young man if he was being chased by the monarchy, and when the boy hesitated, the captain declared that kings had no right to interfere in the affairs of chaos. Jürgen Chiver begged the young man to do him a big favor and save the fortress lord. 2 hours later, while the captain and the mysterious woman rested in the infirmary, the companion asked our hero if he truly wanted to head to the training ground instead of the room for special guests. Chung Ho told me the young man lunged forward and struck, wondering if the guy wanted to settle things with his strength. The old man claimed the boy had cleared the master's tower, and when Jae Huang asked what he knew about it, Chang Ho simply replied that he knew everything. The old man promised that if Jae Huang wins, he'd be ready to answer any question you ask. Jihan knocked out the old man right away, but he yelled for a second round before anyone else could even breathe. Jihan noted the old man had lost and faced questioning, but the old man roared that he still had his strongest move left, reminding Jihan of his own earlier words. Chung Ho labeled the young man heartless and asked his age, to which the man replied he was around 60, though in truth he was over 1,000 years old and far more experienced. Jae Chien asked if the old man had spent 1,000 years just swinging his weapon, and the old man nodded yes. The young man guessed the old man had only practiced for a decade, but the old man struck him so hard he flew backward, then asked with interest what the young man's technique was called. Jae Hwan claimed the strike was normal, but Chang Ho snorted that what a terrible name for a technique that could actually cause real trouble. Ji Hai whispered that he held something even more powerful up his sleeve, and Chang Ho's eyes lit up with eager curiosity. Staring at the young man, the old man couldn't help but remember the terrifying King of Chaos and wonder if he could even stop this powerful, unfamiliar attack. Ji Huang warned that he was coming right up, and the old man trembled with terror, admitting that he had to give up. A warrior asked the kneeling man what dark villain the Great Lands of Steel called the Fifth Region, and the man replied that he knew the Monarch of Darkness was tied to Chaos. The unbreakable Steel King asked why Chaos, even though all the Great Lands had promised to stay out of its business. The assistant explained it was a bit tricky and pointed to the screen, where you could see Xawan holding a sword. This video called Hero of the 99th Floor became a huge hit, but Fake said the Dark Abyss Monarch would soon claim it, only for the guy to reject the game, smash through the tower's roof, and vanish into chaos. Hoyu claimed a watcher from the 100th floor was supposed to be there, but Fake said that guy took him out, and Steel Monarch then asked if the 9th region's ruler had anything to do with chaos. Fake claimed they only just discovered the truth, though the Monarch of Darkness had actually been working with chaos for a long time, while many chaos groups had been his close allies all along. Hoyu sent a message declaring he was heading straight for chaos.